Low cloud, mist, fog. That is what many of you are waking up to this morning across central and eastern parts of the country. And it's stubborn. It's going to take a while to clear because the low pressure system that brought those blustery showers over the past day or so is filling, becoming less intense. The flow is slackening off. And that's why we saw that low cloud and mist developing overnight. Right now, conditions across the United Kingdom vary considerably from region to region. Across the southwest, temperatures are running mild. Cornwall and Devon seeing around 9, possibly 10 Celsius, rather damp. Meanwhile, parts of the Scottish Highlands dropped to -5 this morning. That's the contrast we are dealing with. And that contrast is about to become even more significant as we move through the coming week. The Wirral has already seen heavy snow earlier today. That part of a swathe of showers pushing northwards across parts of England and Wales into Scotland as we go through the afternoon. Most of these are rain, some sleet mixed in over higher ground. Could be quite heavy in places, particularly around the Irish Sea coast. For England and Wales, away from the west and southwest, many of those showers are clearing away. Turning drier, there will be some breaks in the cloud, particularly towards the west. Some sunshine breaking through, eastern areas staying under that cloud, which could be quite stubborn. And if you're re-stuck under that low cloud, it is going to feel pretty cold, even though temperatures are broadly what you'd expect for the time of year, generally peaking from around 6 to 7 Celsius in the north to around 9, possibly 10 Celsius towards the south. A fairly damp end to the day across some central and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground, but most of that rain clears through as we go overnight. Then, apart from a few showers here and there, lots of dry weather for a time. Some thick cloud across eastern parts, and again, that thick cloud could lower to some murkiness. So once more, some mist, some fog. Central and eastern parts in particular likely to have some difficult driving conditions. Poor visibility early on Sunday morning. Further west, clearer skies. But even with these clear skies, we could see a few patches of fog developing and a touch of frost here or there. Then later in the night, more rain and even thicker cloud coming in from the southeast. There could be a touch of frost across some western and northwestern parts where we get those clearer skies. Temperatures dropping a few degrees below freezing in some places. But for many, where we get that thicker cloud continuing, temperatures not dropping a huge amount for the time of year. A wet start across some central and southeastern parts of England on Sunday. That rain then slowly making progress further northwards. It's going to affect everywhere from the West Country up through eastern Wales, up towards northern England, and then later eastern parts of Scotland. Elsewhere, a fair amount of fine weather. Much of Scotland avoiding the rain, albeit a few showers for western parts. Much of Northern Ireland also staying largely dry. Just a few showers perhaps towards the east. Some drier, brighter weather developing across parts of East Anglia and maybe Kent, possibly even towards London later in the afternoon. Where you under the cloud and the rain, it's going to feel pretty cold. But in other places where we get any sunshine breaking through, not too bad considering it is the middle of January. Now, let me explain what is happening on a larger scale because this is where things get interesting. We are continuing to see precipitation trying to push in off the Atlantic. But we are seeing more and more resistance from the east into the weekend and next week as a huge Scandinavian high starts to build in. Initially, it's not going to directly impact us too much. It's going to push the jet stream southwards. It's going to slow down the movement of the low pressure systems and potentially prevent them from moving eastwards into the North Sea. That could mean some areas might stay dry, but other areas could get quite a pasting as we see slower moving areas of rain. This big Scandinavian high has been within the model output for much of this week and it continues to remain there. We are very confident that Scandinavian high will be building in through the coming days and potentially nudging more towards us and directly impacting us by the end of next week. We've still got a lot of uncertainty within the runs, but some come the end of next working week into next weekend, so in only 7 days' time already have cold or even very cold air starting to move in from the east. Other runs are a little bit more skeptical and have more of a battleground scenario with that Scandinavian high trying to push easterly our way, but instead the Atlantic S able to hold on. Although it remains cool, it is not looking mild at all. It is more unsettled and would probably be that cold but rainy pattern and not a wintry pattern, as very cold air stays over the continent. A lot of uncertainty as we head towards the end of January, but it is definitely looking like it is going to be turning colder, maybe even very cold. And there is definitely a window opening for more snowy and wintry weather, especially into the final 5 or 6 days of January and into early February. Let me show you what the models are indicating. The live radar from earlier this evening shows we've got a bit of an east-west split, rain moving in off the Atlantic, slightly drier further eastwards. This is going to be a recipe for what we were going to see over the coming days, where rain is going to try and move in off off the Atlantic, but not have much success as it pushes eastwards, as we do start to see that big high pressure system develop to our northeast. It's not really there yet. It is not fully consolidated yet, so we're really not seeing that too much at the moment. But over the next few days, it will start to build in and could start to dominate further northwards into next working week and have more of a direct impact on us in around 5, 6, 7 days' time. Rain moving in from the west will bring further spells of heavy but fast-moving rain through this evening. These winds are coming up from the south. Yes, they're not making much progress eastwards, but they are pretty blustery, moving southwards to northwards. Temperatures where we have the rain further northwards and eastwards are slightly colder. That's expected with clearer skies. Further southwards with more areas of rain and cloud, the temperatures are milder, but they are still chilly. It's not terribly warm out there. Mid to high single digits in those areas, close to freezing further northwards. Not too unusual for January. Over the next few days, rainfall is going to continue to move up through the south overnight into Sunday. We will get rain further eastwards. We're not going to see no rain eastwards. It just might be a little bit drier into next week. We continue to see those areas of rain spiraling. The low pressure system really doesn't move much from being positioned right over the Republic of Ireland. And that S, because of that Scandinavian high and that block that is starting to build, weather systems are starting to move in from more of the south to southeasterly, showing you the flow is starting to reverse. You can see that with rain heading straight southwards to northwards as we see low pressure coming up against the high pressure to our east. The models actually have low pressure winning out in general over the next few days. It doesn't move into the North Sea like we do normally expect with a stronger jet stream. It kind of moves in, fizzles away, and clears to our north. That's exactly what we see through Tuesday into Wednesday. That rain moves through, fizzles away, and then heads back northwards. That S, because we see these lows approach off the Atlantic, push in, and not really make much success at all. That low to our west does not move in the final 24 hours. Yes, we are going to see rainfall. We are going to stay reasonably unsettled over the coming days. But slowly, that high pressure to our northeast will have more and more influence. By the end of next week, we could be, especially in the east, definitely under the influence more of that higher pressure. Colder, frostier, foggier. Maybe then in the subsequent days, we could start to turn colder and maybe even more wintry. Maximum temperatures tonight show frost in the north, further southwards mid-single digits. Saturday afternoon, 7 to 8 degrees in the south. Average to maybe just above average, colder further north, not unusual really for the time of year. Into Sunday, frost where it is chilly. Sunday afternoon, 6 to 10 degrees. Into Monday, frost with clearer skies, cloud and a bit of rain, a little bit milder. Into the afternoon, mid to high single digits. Tuesday, frosts in the west, a little bit colder there. Further eastwards, mid to high single digits, really not deviating too far from average. Some areas slightly cooler, some areas slightly milder. Nothing too unexpected or too weird for the time of year. But later on next week, you can start to see colder air just out to our east, colder lower level air, and generally colder upper air just sitting off screen to our east. That will slowly start to push in. It is not very cold yet, but it is cooler, chillier, lower dew points as well, just starting to nudge our way. That is the sign for it turning a bit colder towards the end of the month. That is fairly consolidating. Most runs are colder or chillier towards the end of the month, but it's just whether we see a cold and wintry pattern or a bit more of a colder, drier pattern, or maybe even colder unsettled. But that sort of more rainy unsettled pattern where it S5 or 6 degrees, but heavy rain. We've got those three scenarios we were looking at. All three of them, it is looking chilly, if not pretty cold indeed, to end January. The GFS has been fairly bullish over the past few days for very cold conditions. Yesterday wasn't so much, but it's back on board today with the operational run. The high pressure really starts to take over towards Scandinavia over the coming days. It's not really in an orientation to pull in bitterly cold easterlies yet. It just halts the jet stream and doesn't really allow much to move in. By day 7 or 8, we are seeing potentially bitterly cold easterly winds with heavy snow showers most likely piling in from the North Sea in some runs. The high pressure does collapse quite quickly there in some scenarios. So yes, it could be cold and snowy for a couple of days, but eventually a drier, colder pattern. Interestingly, that high pressure system collapses temporarily but rebuilds, and we see another spell of easterly there as we head into the final few days of the month and into early February with another push of cold or even very cold air. We are not tapping into the really bitterly cold beast from the east type air masses. Not quite tapping into that at this time frame, but we're getting close. It is very cold in some runs, initially slightly milder, but stays chilly under the high pressure. Then another spell of of very cold air late January to early February. We're not seeing terribly consistent runs in terms of the exact details, but easterly winds, we are seeing it pretty much in every run. Yes, there is the odd run that S not successful, but most runs are successful in pulling an easterly wind. Given the high-level synoptics and that cold air looks like it is guaranteed to drift into Eastern Europe, if we see an easterly wind, there is quite a high chance it is cold, if not very cold. The GEM model has been a bit of a mixed run. Some days it has been very cold, setting up a very cold pattern. Other days, not so much. Again, that high pressure up to our northeast starting to dominate. It's a battle between westerlies and easterlies. Out towards day 10, it is the cold but unsettled pattern. We've still got the block up to our north, but it is not strong enough to pull in very cold air from the east. Instead, we end up with cold but rainy conditions with low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. We re-knot in terribly cold air masses, not terribly mild air masses, but weather fronts will be pushing in, coming up against that cold block, with the very cold air remaining in the North Sea or just across the near continent, 4, 5, 6 degrees, maybe 7 degrees with heavy rain, heavy bands of rain moving through, a more miserable but colder pattern. The ECMWF has been a mixed run over the coming days as well. It was quite early to cotton on to colder easterlies last week and is continuing to show it in some of its runs. It is not quite as quick to turn to an easterly later next week. It keeps it very unsettled into next week and looks like a battleground pattern setting up here with a battle between low pressure off the Atlantic, high pressure to our northeast. But eventually easterlies do win because it's more of a battleground scenario. We're not going to pull in the very cold easterly winds. We pull in cold air, but because it's not as much of a long fetch, direct, long-lasting easterly, a lot of that very cold air doesn't get tugged all the way to Western Europe. Instead, we see colder air, big battles going on. Right towards the end of the run, we do see a really brisk, strong easterly wind. There'd be heavy snowfall with a low sinking southwards, but it is a lot more of a marginal pattern. It's all because the lows are a little bit stronger. That rain, snow, or colder to less cold line is right over the UK. It would be a battle with that line moving to and fro. A bit of a messy scenario, but it would be cold. There would be some winteriness around. Now, the AIFS, the AI-driven model from ECMWF, offers a different perspective. This model uses machine learning instead of physics equations. It looks at starting conditions and asks, historically, what has happened? It is learning weather patterns from data rather than simulating them from first principles. It will have different biases, hopefully fewer biases compared to the physics models. The AIFS has been very much on board with that easterly flow. Those lows sink south, and unlike some other models, they done to push eastwards. They slide down towards the Mediterranean. Towards the end of this run, we see very cold easterly winds with low pressure trying to penetrate across from the Atlantic, but not having any success. We stay in that very cold air pretty much from next weekend for the whole of the following week, eventually ending up with an even colder easterly by the end of that. Doesn't mean this is definitely going to happen, but the data-driven machine learning model is definitely on board with this pattern, with that easterly winning out. No matter what individual operational run we look at, it always has the risk that it is an outlier. The GFS ensembles are very similar to yesterday. Average to above average over the coming days. For London, 7, 8, 9 degrees, a degree or two above average, but nothing too crazy. Not really that noticeable. By the middle to end of next week, we trend close to average and then eventually come next weekend below average. This is where some of those runs start to put in an easterly. Most Donti, it's about a quarter to a fifth. But slowly, more and more into the final week of January, there are a lot of much colder runs. The ensemble mean gets down close to -4, -5. A fairly strong cold signal, but I wouldn't say it's locked in as there still are milder runs. We would expect it to be locked in anyway, being 7 to 10 days away. There are those very cold runs, those more beast from the east like runs, -10 and lower. The operational is at that level, and there are runs, but not an overwhelming number. They are oscillating in frequency between the ensemble runs, maybe 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 at most, that get down to that level at some point. That is a lot, but it's not an overwhelming number that we say. It is definitely a favored scenario. It is definitely the most favored it has been all winter for that sort of depth of cold, but it is by no means guaranteed or a locked-in pattern at this stage. Definitely real interest, and it has trended that way this week. Sea level pressure is looking reasonably high. There are more wobbles from some runs, and those will be the runs that are more of a battle with the Atlantic. Operational GFS is one of the coldest runs. It S got one of the highest pressures, and that S expected with that high pressure tucked in closer, bringing those easterly winds. Temperatures generally dropping off regardless of what ensemble member you look at. They were all cooling down, generally speaking. It might not turn bitterly cold, it might not be wintry, but definitely looks like it's going to be colder into next weekend and the following week, 3, 4, 5 degrees. Dew points indicate the wind direction. An Atlantic airflow generally brings milder dew points. A continental airflow more generally brings cooler airflows regardless of whether it has a very cold air mass. It could be an air mass at 0 degrees, around average or above average, but still can have very cold dew points. It just indicates more of the wind direction. Colder dew points longer term, and some exceptionally cold dew points indicating dry continental air, potentially polar air coming in as well. The ECMWF ensembles show a similar drop-off longer term, maybe not quite as cold with its general ensembles, but it has got quite a few very cold runs as well. Similar to the GFS, but overall slightly milder than the GFS, with more runs closer to average. Still slightly below average, just not quite as cold as those GFS runs. Maybe less bullish there from the east. The operational run S kind of in the middle. The ECMWF runs at the moment are more on board with a battleground scenario. GFS, more of a clear-cut easterly. The IFS ensemble members are very much on board with that colder or bitterly cold pattern. The ensemble mean is probably even colder than the GFS by a degree or two, down towards -5, maybe -6. There are a lot more runs down towards the -8, -10, and then a good cluster still -10 and below, including the operational AIFS model. The point of inflection for that very cold air to move in is in around a week's time. I suspect in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll have a much better idea on the timings of the potential easterly or cold easterly. It is going to slowly turn toward an easterly flow, even over the coming days. The depth of cold as well, I think we'll have a bit of a breakthrough in the coming days where we either go one way or the other. Either we see that cold signal strengthen, all models come on board, and it's more 70, 80% showing very cold than the 30 or 40% showing very cold right now. Or we go the other way where the very cold becomes more of a minority option. We see more of a battleground scenario. It very much is at odds at the moment. We don't know. I don't really want to call it because of the amount of times these have failed over the past few years. But there is a lot of interest. I do think that final 5 days of January, maybe not as early as the 23rd or 24th, but 25th, 26th onwards into early February, I do think there is a pretty strong chance it turns much colder. If it turns very cold down towards ice day levels, then of course a high chance of seeing further winteriness. With an easterly wind, that winteriness would be a lot more widespread and potentially a lot more severe for areas that didn't see much at all earlier on in January. Now, what does this mean practically for you? As we go later on and into next week, there is more relatively changeable, unsettled weather to come. There are going to be systems coming in from the west. Whilst they may not make much progress across the country because of a blocking high to the east of us, we can still expect some rather wet and at times windy weather through most days. Temperatures are gradually going to be dropping a little bit as we go next week, but it is going to take a while, if at all, for anything much colder than what we currently have. If you are in areas prone to flooding, keep an eye on Environment Agency warnings, particularly across the southwest and parts of Wales where we're seeing persistent rain. Natural Resources, Wales and SEPA in Scotland are your sources for flood warnings in those areas. For driving conditions, particularly early Sunday morning across central and eastern England, expect poor visibility. Mist and fog, take it steady. Allow extra time for your journey. It's not just about speed, it's about being able to see what is ahead. If we do see that cold easterly pattern develop towards the end of the month, those in the southeast and East Anglia, you don't see this sort of pattern often. Most people down there don't keep snow shovels to hand, and that is fair enough. If you can, consider working from home if heavy snow does materialize. The roads want to be gritted as thoroughly as they would be further north. It's not a criticism, it is just reality. You don't get this weather often enough to justify the same level of infrastructure. Scotland, you're already dealing with colder conditions. You know the drill. But even for you, if we get a sustained easterly, it could be more significant than what you've seen so far this winter. For the elderly and vulnerable, if temperatures do drop, as some models suggest, now is the time to make sure heating systems are working properly. Check in on neighbours. Make sure prescriptions are stocked up. It is basic stuff, but it matters. We will be keeping you up to date with the forecast through the weekend and into next week. This is a developing situation. Models are still working out the details. In 2 or 3 days, we'll have much better clarity on whether we are heading for a proper cold spell or just a chillier than average end to January. The data suggests change is coming. The question is how significant that change will be. We've seen these patterns before. The Great Storm of '87, the Burns Day Storm of '90, the Beast from the East. in 2018. You remember those. This isn't at that level yet, and it may not get there. But it's worth watching. Stay informed, stay prepared, and we'll keep you updated as the models